Hello and welcome to Newspeak, the New Culture Forum's current affairs discussion programme. I'm Peter Whittle, and this week I'm pleased to joined, as usual, by Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, who's our senior fellow and also a royal commentator you might have seen on GB News quite a lot lately, and Philip Kiszely, Dr. Philip Kiszely from Leeds University, also a senior fellow. All these seniors, we need a few juniors, don't we? I mean, before we go into the obvious story of this week, which is the leadership, I wanted to ask, how did you get on with this historic day of heat?
Perfectly well. It was fine. It was a bit hot, and closed the curtains, kept the windows shut. It wasn't too bad at all. I'm still alive. I'm still here, so it's all good.
Oh yeah.
I'm wearing mohair as well.
Yeah.
I felt slightly senior, speaking about seniors, but no, I had no problem at all. I mean, for heaven's sake, we go on holiday to enjoy that sort of weather.
Yes.
I've been in Egypt and it was 52 degrees, and apologies to Noel Coward, but I didn't go out in the midday sun, but I was out certainly in the evening sun and the morning sun. And I was actually, I had to go to a formal event on the hottest day, wearing a blazer and tie and trousers.
That's most unlike you, actually,
and, dabbed my brow a couple of times, but and I'm hardly a svelte chap, and I managed to endure it, so I'm not quite sure what all the fuss was about.
No, I think we're going to talk a little bit about alarmism a bit later, actually. But before we talk about the Tory leadership issue this week, I want to say, get well soon, Emma. I know, she's usually hosting this show, but in fact, she's really been stricken by a really nasty case of flu, not COVID, flu. And I know that from the comments, she's got quite a little fan club going on. So I'm sorry it's me to those guys. And get well soon, Emma. And then we can talk all about the leadership contestants with you. Actually, as we're recording this, we've actually now got this result of what we know is going to happen, which is that the two people who've been selected by Parliament, Lizz Truss and Rishi Sunak, are going to be put to the membership. Does this fill you with expectancy, joy, what?
No, it doesn't. Kemi's gone, and so it feels that all of the excitement, the potential new way forward, everything that's potentially good about the party seems to have disappeared. And it feels that it's just the same old, and I'd be surprised if many of our viewers are particularly excited about Rishi and Liz.
What do you think, Ray?
Yeah, it was utterly depressing. I mean, I'm glad that Captain Woke has gone. Penny Mordaunt, at least she's not going to be a risk. But to have lost Kemi, I would have loved to have seen her in the final two. Such a fresh face, and that's the future of conservatism in this country. Like Heineken, able to reach the parts other beers can't reach. And I just think that the debates that we're going to see now are going to be so much poorer because of it. Even if she didn't win, she would at least be able to put onto the Conservative Party platform agendas over these hustings, these critical issues. And of course, it's almost as if the MPs know that the membership would have voted for Kemi if she got to the final two, and they deliberately scuttled her. And it's almost as if after 12 years being in power, they've now become so tired and lethargic that they don't understand that their very future lies in a fresh face, not more of the establishment, and not, I'm sorry, Liz Truss, who is even worse than Boris Johnson light. Boris Johnson was never a conservative, a true conservative, and neither is Mrs. Lib Dem anti-monarchy Liz Truss.
Yes, actually she was quite, she's the epitome, is she not, of a career politician?
Yeah, we were talking about this last week, and people are just turned off totally by career politicians. Just coming back to the Kemi point, just very, very quickly, I know we've made it, but the good thing about it, and really for me the only good news story about this, is that she's going to be back. She's only 42, and I think so many people have just been so incredibly impressed by her. Not just the press, not just people at the Telegraph, not just people at the Spectator, but generally people, the population, I think, has seen that what conservatism can be like and what the Conservative Party can be like. And I think that's really exciting. The only problem is it's long term.
And the problem I have there, that I agree with you entirely, and I think she does have a great future there, but I'm just so concerned about getting to work on reversing the long march through the institutions now. we're at a point now where it's critical. People talk about climate change and we've only got a few years to get the temperature down. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to the culture wars. There's an aging demographic. We've got youngsters now who would, if they were given the vote, there wouldn't be a single Tory MP in power. And our time is limited. And we've wasted so much time, the last 3 years under Johnson and then the previous 9 years before that under May and Cameron. And I really wanted Kemi to go in there running, maybe keep Rishi Sunak as Chancellor of the Exchequer, but just to tackle those issues. And I just fear that there'll be more lethargy, more kicking things into the long grass, more making announcements but not actually doing anything. And then, of course, if Liz Truss gets in there, I wouldn't be surprised if Keir Starmer beats her. I think Liz Truss is very much would be like a Theresa May, an untested character who won't actually prove to be as good as she thinks she is. And then you've got another 5 years of a Labour Party in power. And then if Kemi can come in after 5 years, will it be too late?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I say that Kemi's the good news story, but if you're talking about the long march through the institution, that reversal is huge now. I mean, in 5 years, you don't want to think about it in 5 years' time. But I'm very familiar, certainly with education institutions, with arts and performing arts institutions and companies, and it's pretty much a lost cause at the moment. I don't think it's about changing the institutions. I've said this before. I don't think it's about changing the institutions. I think it's about creating new ones. And we've talked about this before on this channel. It really is about creating a new culture through new institutions. It's not like, getting the oil tanker and bringing it back, because I don't really think we can do that.
Say Kemi would understand that point, I think. I mean, it's purely an instinctive thing, but I think she would understand. I'd love to see her being Secretary of State for Education. I just remember she was when I was on the Assembly for that 1 year she was there before she got a safe seat. Yeah. And in fact, she was extremely forceful. She took no prisoners and all that. But in fact, in the debates, she kind of, I got the feeling that she was a newbie a little bit, fair enough, but she is. She's a bit of a newbie. But she was commanding with Sadiq Khan and everything. Could you imagine that if it was something like education? I mean, she understands all of this stuff. She's about the only one. I mean, I was going to ask you, we talk about cultural issues the whole time. How do these people stack up when it comes to our issues? The stuff people write in about. How does Liz Truss, and for that matter, Rishi Sunak,
well, they don't.
You heard them say anything about any of it?
No, they don't stack up. That's the answer, isn't it?
I think Rishi understands his need to appeal to the grassroots, so he has come out in recent years to talk about biology being very important and
but
to protect women's safe spaces.
Could he? That women that
no, he couldn't.
No, but this is it. And the irony is now we're faced with these two mediocre candidates, and Liz Truss is the only of the two. Liz Truss is the one who would be more likely to wave the flag of Britain and in the culture wars, and yet that she doesn't really believe any of it because she's a pure careerist. And as I said, nobody can go from being a Lib Dem, speaking at a Lib Dem conference to call for the abolition of the monarchy, to transfer it herself into what she is now. It's just like Boris Johnson writing those two pieces on whether or not to support Brexit, and then deciding actually Brexit won't be won, but if I side with the Yes team, I'll get a lot of public reception for that. She's a pure careerist. You're right. Look at those ghastly photographs we were seeing over the course of the last few months of her posing for the cameras, getting into a tank like Thatcher, wearing Margaret Thatcher's outfits. There's no sincerity, there's no genuine aspect to this woman. It's purely superficial, and just like Boris Johnson. The only hope is that maybe Liz Truss will get somebody like a Dominic Cummings to be behind her to actually guide her along this path. Then I could possibly support her, but right now it's just fluff.
It's performative politics. We talk about career politicians, but there's also this aspect of performative politics. This is what we'll do today. We'll meet these targets, these significations, and I'll wear this and it will remind people of that. That's not policy, is it? This is just connections. And I think I completely agree with you, Rafe.
And she's such a lightweight as well. I mean, do people not remember she was a laughing stock of the country at a previous conference when she came out to talk about cheese? And if we could have a clip of that to insert maybe into this video. I mean, this woman has no charisma at all. She's trying her best. She's probably gone to some confidence charm school to know about putting your shoulders back, but there is absolutely nothing about her that strikes me as being leadership qualities. And luckily she's against Keir Starmer, who's Mr. Bland himself, but I can't see how she's going to energise the population to vote for another Tory government. And I think just like Theresa May came unstuck during the election campaign, there'll be every chance of Liz Truss doing so, because she simply doesn't have the oratorical skills or the charm or the charisma.
No. She's very brittle, it seems to me. It's a very brittle presence, It's like that, if someone wants to be Thatcherite, they will stand and look at us rather fierce, with a sort of, a pussy bow tie and everything, bow blouse thing. But it just doesn't wash, really. I mean, it simply doesn't wash. I asked you if you'd heard them say anything about cultural issues. So, like, nothing historical, right? Has she said trans women are not women? Do you know?
I don't know.
Have you ever heard?
No, I don't think she has. No. I don't think she has. Or if she has, it's in response to something that will get her brownie points. You know what I mean? She hasn't. It's not something that she will just come out and say and mean it. That's the thing. It doesn't matter. It's all about context when she says it, and what if it's a response to something. It's whether she means it or not. I'm not interested in them saying things anymore. I look for the context in which they speak, and if they're if it's true and I can understand it to be true, then I'll listen. But I'm not interested in her saying, well, if I say this now, it'll get me brownie points, and people will forget about it in 3 weeks' time, and then I can go back to what it used to be.
Winston Churchill once said, it's very hard for a nation to look up to a person who always has his ear to the ground. And I think that applies to all of the candidates apart from Kemi.
Absolutely.
Do you think, what I found is because I did find, after having not watched the broadcast news and everything for so long, I actually was on holiday, we watched the ITV thing with Julie Etchingham, which I thought she did pretty well, because there was no stupid audience, like lefties or anything. But what was striking was what they didn't talk about. We just had a massive grooming gang scandal. You would think they would want to put their 2 pence worth in. Nothing on immigration, absolutely nothing. 2/3 of the country want there to be restrictions, or at least some restrictions or drastic restrictions. Nothing. It was all about tax cuts. I mean, are you convinced people care about tax cuts? I mean, of course we sort of care, but would it make you vote for somebody? If someone said, I will put like the Social Democrat Party, I would put a moratorium of 20 years on immigration, I can see people voting for that.
Well, there's been this peculiar fetishization about tax cuts in the Tory Party, because tax cuts aren't inherently conservative in them. Roger Scruton, for example, always said that it's important to look after a society. Being a conservative means conserving communities. That does mean building council houses if they're needed. That does mean protecting societies, and if that means greater expenditure of the state, so be it. Margaret Thatcher, this is a great idea that Margaret Thatcher was a great tax cutter. When she came to power, she didn't cut taxes until she had got the nation's finances in order, and she understood the Treasury needs to take the revenue until that point. And I think that's where Rishi Sunak actually does deserve some credit, because he hasn't done what the others... everyone knows that tax cuts are a mistake right now, because tax cuts are essentially going to deprive the exchequer of funds, but also they're going to cause a further surge in inflation. And that's the last thing you need to do. The Bank of England has called for wage restraint. They're opposed to tax cuts too. And Rishi Sunak's been the only person brave enough to call it as it is. And all the other candidates seem to think, just by chanting this silly mantra of tax cuts, they're going to appeal to the Tory membership, who seem also to have drunk from this poisoned chalice.
And I think it's that they don't necessarily want to make tax cuts. It's just that they don't want to talk about the other things. Tax cuts are uncontroversial. Who wouldn't accept a tax cut on a personal level? I agree completely what you say, Rafe, about the exchequer and it needing money. But on a personal level, who wouldn't accept a tax cut? Everybody would. But it's much more difficult to talk about issues around trans. It's much more difficult to talk about immigration, isn't it? It's much more difficult to talk about grooming gangs. And this is why I'm always very concerned about the context in which they say things. If they're proactive and they mean what they say, then all well and good. But If they don't, then I'm not interested. And tax cuts is, for me, it's just the easy way out. I'm not listening to what they say about tax cuts. I'm listening to what they don't say about everything else.
Yeah, it's sort of I mean, there is this part of the Tory Party that is obsessively economic, definitely. But I think, as you say, this is about them feeling comfortable, and they don't want to go. If someone gave a question out saying, there are more and more stories about the indoctrination of children in our schools. Should children be taught about trans rights at the age of 5? Wouldn't that be a good question? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I can't believe, I don't know what these people would say. You know, I do know what Penny Mordaunt said about this kind of stuff.
Because she's got previous.
I've got it here, look. She wrote this book called Greater, Britain After the Storm. And it's Britain After the Storm. So I assume from that, we're the storm, you know, like Brexiteers and everything. Anyway, but she was a Brexiteer. But she wrote this book with someone called Chris Lewis. And in it, there are these quotes, which I don't know how far they've been in the media. In our kind of area around here in this bubble, they've been. Here are some quotes in the book. I know you've talked about them, Rafe, but this is her, Penny Mordaunt. She's talking about sitcoms. It Ain't Half Hot Mum featured casual racism, homophobia, white privilege, colonialism, transphobia, blah, blah, blah. In other words, a bad thing. There's another quote. Kenneth Clark made the great 1969 TV series Civilization. It explained how superior Oxford-educated British middle-aged white men were. This is a conservative.
They were. What's the argument here?
You know, Black Lives Matter has drawn attention to inequality and justice. And just one more. And they bang this drum so much. The problem is that most of our leaders are drawn from a narrow background. Their education and training was from last century when the world was very different. It was long-term, male, patient, predictable, factual, planned, heterosexual, white, Christian, Western. Now look, the reason I've written this out is that was a Conservative Party candidate for leader.
A Conservative Party candidate who dresses herself in the Union flag, who wears a military uniform and tries to portray herself as the ultimate patriot. No patriot would spew down such vile about it ain't a half hot mum, dad's army. I mean, you know, Jimmy Perry and David Croft's stuff is the stuff that built up the nation. It's harmless stuff still shown on BBC Two, albeit now with warnings. But you know, if generations of children could go up watching this without once thinking of anything there being racist or homophobic, it just goes to show you the dearth of talent that someone like that is the best that we can possibly show of patriotic Britain.
And the irony is, she's talking about cultural and political obsolescence, isn't she? In cliche, you know, in absolute obsolete languages. She's making points that were made and debunked 25, 30 years ago. It's all the same stuff. It's just recycled. And the thing is, as you say, this is, you know, she was standing for the leader of the Conservative Party to be Prime Minister, you know, and she's regurgitating this guff.
I mean, reading that, I would get angry if I thought, oh, this is Jeremy Corbyn, you know, let alone Tory Party candidate. Anyway, reason I say that is that I have the nearest I've got is that Rishi Sunak tried to evade the question about trans. Penny Mordaunt said all of this stuff. The others we just simply don't know about. The other thing as well, weren't they all basically singing from the same hymn sheet when it came to the environment? You know, when it came to net zero? I mean, I think broadly speaking, they were, apart from again Kemi Badenoch, who basically was saying not at the expense of British economy.
Exactly. As long as it doesn't bankrupt the nation and as long as it doesn't hobble our economy, then she said she's mildly tied into the idea of net zero, but not necessarily at 2050 if it came with its expenses. But yes, all of the other ones have tied themselves to that.
Yeah, and this is getting, like we've had this week, you know, these debates took place, didn't they, during this incredible weather, hottest day, whatever. I was away it wasn't quite so hot, but looking at these maps, you know, of the weather, you know, you had like good old 1970s map, 32 degrees, and then you had blazing, like demonic red Britain. I mean, they're going overboard, aren't they, Sean?
Pure hysteria. I mean,
Hysteria.
I was born in the summer of 76. I was born in June 76. All of the photographs as a baby, all of the grass is yellow around me and everything else. And
but that wasn't the sign.
that was a sepia tone of the photographs. That's how old they were. But I just got to, how on earth did we get an empire if we were so lily-livered and limp and shrinking violets? Who was going into the Rangoon jungles? Who was going down the Limpopo? I mean, you just sort of wonder what on earth happened to Britain. I often say this to people now. I said, when did the Greeks stop being Greek? When did that great civilization stop? When did the Scottish or the Scottish Enlightenment stop being Scots? And as a whole, when have the British stopped being British?
And also, when did we get so stupid? It's really, really hot outside, so don't go outside. Close the curtains a bit. Even my cat knows that. And it just makes me, well, on the one hand, it makes me laugh because you think to yourself, when people are saying these things and people are complaining, I've been out and I've nearly passed out and all the rest of it. How do you feed yourself? What do you do? You feel like saying, if you want to soil your pants, it means you need to go to the toilet. So go to the toilet. In other words, why do people need to be told to do things all the time or told not to do things all the time? And this is just another one of those examples, isn't it? Where, you need to keep safe. You need to do this. Drink water. Stay hydrated. You need to drink water. If you're thirsty, drink water. Do you really need to be told that? My God.
It's the same sort of hysteria we had with COVID, right?
Yeah.
And when it came to COVID, I was always opposed to the lockdowns, but from the day one, I said, protect the elderly and protect the vulnerable. If you've got these comorbidities and you're old, you are at high risk, you can be shielded and sheltered and let the rest of the world go about its duty. Similar thing here. If you're very old or you've got breathing difficulties, yes, you can have your public health announcements made targeted towards you.
Yeah.
You can get your shelter and can stay at home. Let the rest of us go about our duties.
I'll answer my own question, actually. We got stupid when common sense went out of the window. When actually common sense was, that was when we got stupid.
Well, no, I think that's true. I agree, but that's because common sense was framed as being a right-wing
That's
thing.
right, yeah. That was, it's bigoted to have common sense,
Instinctive feelings were kind of dodgy, all of that.
Yeah.
But this is sort of, don't you think, this is obviously played into the environmental agenda. There's no getting away from it. All these houses don't spontaneously combust, do they? So we've seen 40 houses in London. Okay, it ups the risk a bit, but heat them itself doesn't start to make these things explode.
Well, I'm not sure I agree there. I think one of the problems here is that, yes, we can be opposed to the green levies, we can be opposed to net zero, but there is a fact that the 10 hottest days ever recorded, 8 of them have been since 2003. Right, 1911, 1990, and then there is that things are hotting up. There is a global.
I don't think anyone's denying that.
We can't deny that, right?
Yeah,
there are wildfires in Australia that you'd never see before. Wildfires in Canada, in British Columbia, and in America, in Greece, and Spain, and Portugal. You would never see that before. There were 2,600 phone calls to the London Fire Brigade yesterday, compared to 300, which is the normal number. The fire brigade haven't been this busy since the Blitz. A lot of these fires start because of composts. People have compost in the back of their garden and the grass is so dry and the fence catches fire. So there are real reasons. Those fires, I think, were all genuine. I'm sure there may be some cases of arson or someone's got a barbecue, but it's a completely unprecedented situation. Now, you're free to discuss how to deal with that or how much of that is man-made, but I do think there are some people I've heard on the right, on GB News and elsewhere, who've tried to pretend that none of this is actually changing and it's always ever been thus. No, these are unique situations. You just have to look at the number of tornadoes in the world, look at the flooding that happens in this country all the time. Things are changing. We have to admit that.
But by the same token, we have to keep it in context.
Yes, absolutely.
And we had one day that was over 40, didn't we? Okay, it's a day that's over 40 and there have been fires and all the rest of it, and I'm not saying it's something we should ignore, we shouldn't, but it's still only one day. It's warm out there now, but it's not absolutely sweltering. Okay, so let's keep that in context. If you look at the most of the publications, the news, the media, if you listen to the news, it's almost like it's the end of the world. It's boiling hell out there, and it really isn't. There are one or two writers, I think Brendan O'Neill's written something that, hang on, and he gives some statistics, and more people die of exposure to cold weather than they do of hot weather. And I think there's a particular statistic, something like, we've got better, the survival rate from overheating, we're 96% better than we were 100 years ago. So it's keeping all of that in context. I agree completely with what you're saying, but the problem here is not dealing with the temperature that's getting hotter. It's dealing with it in a way that's sensible.
I agree entirely, and there has been pure hysteria. And we have to discuss what's wrong with overheating in this country. This is the thing. Exactly. But except that heating is happening. Now you say it was 40 degrees for one day. Yes, but the way things are going, you'll have this.
There are going to be more.
You'll have about a week of 40-degree temperatures in 20 years from now or so forth. Now, is that a bad thing? That's the question. At the moment, our infrastructure, for example, the railways are designed to tolerate -10 to +35. But if you go to Spain, it's 0 to 45. If you go to Saudi Arabia, it's whatever to 55. Our infrastructure doesn't cope. We've got carpets in our houses, right? Should we go for nice sort of villas with tiles? So do we need to change our lifestyle? Rather than worrying about it, embrace the Mediterranean lifestyle, perhaps.
It's not all bad.
So that's my point. Accept that the heating is happening, but don't get scared about it. Just say, well, how do we
meet the challenge? Meet the challenge. I think that's precisely what we do.
I'm slightly worried. I don't know whether you feel that now there's a kind of mind, an approach that has been set of overprotection. So lockdowns. Can you see the climate being used for lockdowns? You can say, we've got this 40-degree.
We had a lockdown, didn't we? We had a lockdown yesterday, basically. Don't travel, stay home, don't go to work.
That's the thing that kind of worries me about this. That I think I would agree. Maybe we should actually apparently our wine industry is really booming. Because of the weather. I don't mean to be flippant about it, but nevertheless, there is this sort of sense in which we should just simply hunker down, literally, and just not do anything.
I think that's a really good point, Peter. It's this: we have, not we, but the culture has the same reaction to everything, isn't it? And you can sum it up in one word, and it's fear. That's exactly what it is, and it's a shame, and we need to understand how to be brave again.
And it's very British in a way. When I lived in Canada, the Canadians were always making fun of the Brits when there was 1 centimetre of snow on the ground and everyone used Siberian winter across the sun headlines. And just now we've seen people from the Middle East saying, what on earth are you people worrying about? This is what we have every day. So yes.
Do you remember leaves on the track?
Yes.
Leaves on the track.
The wrong type of snow.
No, wrong type of. Was it wrong type of?
Wrong type of snow and leaves on the track.
Yes. And also 1987, the big storm. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was extraordinary. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember.
Yes, I woke me up. I was 11 years old. Tree crushed the house opposite me. Yes.
Amazing.
Year I left school.
We can't go down a tunnel of nostalgia.
Those were the days.
Much as we would like to, but Philip, thank you so much. Rafe, thanks so much. We're back next week, and as I say, all our very best to Emma. Get well, Emma. And if you enjoy the show, because I know a lot of you do, because it's getting more and more viewers, please do like it, share it around, get your friends to watch, and we shall see you soon. Thanks very much. Hello. If you're enjoying the New Culture Forum channel and you believe in our mission, may I invite you to join our membership scheme at the link below or on our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Our work is more important now than ever, and we have great plans ahead for the future, but we can't do it without your support. From as little as £3 per month, you can help ensure that we continue on our mission. As a member, you'll receive a range of benefits, including access to exclusive content, invitations to our private events, including here at our studios, free copies of our books, and much, much more, including, of course, our famous NCF mug. If you aren't able to become a member, then please help us by clicking this button and subscribing to our channel. It's completely free. Just remember to also click the bell icon so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. Thank you.